Okay, beautiful. Okay, next slide so we can get started. Okay, awesome. So you guys are here because you're coming for the AAS presentation. We have Kelly Twichel here speaking, and just a little bit, we just have a few housekeeping things to tell you guys about. But before we start, we do know that there are a couple new people in here, and we have actually a few other people trickling in still. So if you guys can and aren't in our group me, go ahead and scan that QR code to join in. It's really like our main source of contact. We let everyone know about events and things that we're hosting through that, and you can ask any one of the board members for questions and direct message us if you'd like. But that's our main contact. But also follow us on all our socials. They're on the left. We mostly post on Instagram, but that's all I got for this. Next slide. So today what we got planned, we are going to tell you guys about the end of the semester GBMs and events that we have coming up to close off spring 2021, I mean. Tonight we actually have a fundraiser that Caroline's going to talk about in a little bit at Blaze Pizza, bringing in Pie Day. That was yesterday. If you guys got any pie, go you, but we are celebrating a belated Pie Day. And we are also going to talk about e-board positions that the application's open. So we just want to be able to tell you guys about that again. And then we're going to welcome Kelly Twichel and let her speak a little bit about herself. And we just have a few things at the end of the meeting. So if you guys can stick around for the entirety, that would be great. The next slide. All right.
Wait, so I don't know why the slides aren't really show. Oh, there we go. Okay. So the plan for the semester, we just have a few more GBMs. So today we're having our Kelly Twichel guest speaker, and then in 2 weeks from now, we're going to be talking about careers in adapted athletics. And then we have 2 more GBMs planned for the semester. We're having a few more socials. Next week, we're going to have a panel of surfers speak. We're going to have paint night in a couple weeks, trivia night, and then on 5-3 is going to be our last meeting.
So be on the lookout. And then Madeline, if you want to, oh, sorry.
All right. And then just like Justin was saying, we have our Blaze fundraiser today. It's going to be the location on Balboa. The address is listed right there. It's going to be from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. And then some of our e-board is going to be going there at 6. So if you go there around that time, maybe you'll catch us. They're actually going to be donating 50% of the proceeds to AAS as compared to like 20%. And that was a surprise for us. So everyone should come on over. And then don't forget to mention that you are supporting the AAS fundraiser just at the register, just so we can get the 50%. You get 2 cord points if you are able to prove that you went to the fundraiser. And if you want to order online or through the app, then we have our promo code right over here. It's going to be 1048A.
Okay, so like Caroline said, or Justin said, sorry, we're opening our e-board application. It's currently open. These are the available positions. There's vice president, treasurer, media and marketing, event coordinator, and outreach coordinator. If you are interested, even if you already filled out the other Google form that said you were interested, please fill out the official application, and the QR code is on the side there. You can just scan that. I'll give you a couple more seconds to scan if you want. Okay.
And then if you guys are in our group meets, you would have saw that there was this partner hitting program flyer sent out for the adapted athletics program. The wheelchair tennis team is looking for people to come out and practice with them and help them out. If you have any experience playing tennis, that is awesome. That's honestly what we were looking for. They need some people to help and rally with them. There's only 4 guys out there, and it really helps in practices if they have some people to practice with. It's totally fine. Able-bodied, welcome. They actually really like playing with them too. So if you have any experience, definitely check it out. Also, if you do not have experience and are interested in still helping, that's totally fine. You can still come out to practices. You mostly will just be collecting all the tennis balls that does take a long time to go collect every time they're done with a drill. So you would really be helping them out by collecting the balls. It's also really fun out there. We're still gonna like limit the amount of people because of COVID regulations, but it is really fun. You get to learn about wheelchair tennis if you have no idea about it, or if you do, you get to learn even more and check out the team that we have here at State. So just wanted to rep that. The program is trying some new things to get more people involved. So if you are interested, check it out. There's also contacts on the bottom for Coach Greg and the SDSU AA intern that's mainly behind this program. But check out the QR code. That's also there. We will send this out at the end of the meeting in an email and possibly again in the group me. So there's many ways that you could get this if you don't want to deal with it right now, but definitely check it out. It's really fun and you can get out during COVID too. Moving forward. All right. Well, that was all the stuff that we wanted to announce. Thanks for bearing with us. And now we get to welcome our guest speaker. Ta-da, next slide. Kelly Twichel. Woohoo! So she is the co-founder and CEO of Trax. She's also an occupational therapist, and we are really excited to have her come and speak and tell us a little bit about her own journey. So we can go ahead and stop sharing and give Kelly the floor.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I'm excited to speak with everyone. And I know that some people had questions that they sent. So I will hopefully address all of those, if not most of them. But if for some reason we don't get to a topic or a question, feel free to email me. I'm about to put my Instagram link in the chat as well as my email address so that you can reach out to me whenever you would like. And I am actually an alum of SDSU, so class of 2013, a little bit ago. So always happy to come back to SDSU, although this time it's virtually. Okay, so my email is in the chat. I will go ahead and start sharing my screen for the presentation. Okay, if y'all could give me a thumbs up to let me know that you can see my screen. Okay, perfect. So make sure that it presents here. Here we go. Okay, awesome. So as I mentioned, went to SDSU, and a little bit about my journey. And I apologize if you hear my cat in the background. He's very vocal. Leo. Anyways, so you all know how it goes with working from home. Okay, so I went to SDSU in 2009 to 2013, and I graduated with a degree in biology. I was born and raised here in San Diego, and I had always wanted to do something in healthcare. So the reason why I wanted to be in healthcare was that, it was, gosh, I think 2005, when I was going into high school, my mom actually suffered a massive stroke. So one morning, it was 2 weeks before starting high school, I actually had a couple of girlfriends over who spent the night, and we woke up to paramedics coming up my stairs in my house because my mom couldn't move. She had fallen in the bathroom because the stroke had basically paralyzed her whole left side. So that was a really scary time, but seeing how therapy really helped her regain a lot of her independence and dignity, it really molded me to realize that I wanted to do that for other people too. So there's a ton of different jobs in healthcare, as you all know, from different types of therapists to nurses to doctors to, all sorts of things. So how did I choose occupational therapy in the end? Well, sometimes when you choose a career, it's not always a straight path, and that's okay. That's totally normal. So, when I was at SDSU, I thought I wanted to be, a doctor. So I went the pre-med track. And then my senior year, when I really should have been applying for med schools by then, something didn't feel right. And I ended up not applying to med school and graduated SDSU with my degree in biology. And took a year and a half off between, SDSU and going to grad school. I worked in cancer research at a lab in La Jolla, and I also worked as a bartender at a golf course. So during that time, I interviewed people and I said, what do you do for a career? And do you like it? And that's what really helped me, because I met some people who were occupational therapists or OT assistants. And I learned more about OT from a new perspective, because when I was first introduced to it when I was in high school, my mom was getting therapy, but I didn't really see it, day in and day out, as far as like talking to the therapist and learning a little bit more. And so when I graduated, I was able to do that. And I applied to OT school and got in here at the University of St. Augustine for Health Sciences, which has a campus in San Marcos, California. They also have campuses in Texas and Florida. That's kind of how my journey came to be for OT. And you might be wondering, okay, great, that's how you became an OT, or at least went to OT school. But what about, from there, how did you start your own company and invent a product and help all these people? Well, in OT school in 2016, there was a class called assistive technology. And if you're not sure what that means, it just means anything, whether it's something you buy straight off the shelf at the store or something that you modify yourself. It's a tool that helps somebody accomplish a task, right? So it may be something to help with mobility, like a wheelchair. It may be, your hearing aid or your glasses, or an app on your phone that helps you do like speech to text. So lots of different technologies are what's called assistive technology. And in that class, we were challenged to create something that would help people with disabilities. And my classmate and I were inspired to help adaptive surfers, such as Chris, who you see on my screen, able to cross the sand at the beach with more independence. Because the solutions before, what we came up with, were, well, one, either people just didn't go because they felt the sand was a barrier to their mobility, or two, somebody carried them across the sand. And you can imagine that's not really preferred for most people, especially a grown man who's a competitive surfer. They don't want to be carried. They want to find a way to get across the sand themselves. So my classmate and I wanted to figure out, what we make into a pathway, like a portable pathway, so that we can help more than one person at a time. Because if we were to come up with a solution to modify wheelchair tires, for example, that only helps one person at a time. If you have a pathway, many different types of people can use that. And that's that concept of universal design, which I really hope that each and every one of you gets a chance to incorporate in your careers at some point, right? Universal design just means that you're creating something that really almost everybody can use and benefit from. So that's a really important concept. And then I'll come back to the golden circle in the future, but it's just a concept to help you if you're starting your own company. Think about how you can develop your brand so that people support it and identify it with the most. But we'll come back to that if we have time. So really the problem that we were solving with our products, our invention, is that outdoor terrain like sand, grass, gravel, and snow is such a barrier to people who use mobility devices or who otherwise have a mobility impairment, right? It's tough just walking through sand. I'm sure you've all experienced that in some way, shape, or form, since we're most of us probably living in San Diego right now. So there's over 30 million Americans who have a mobility impairment. And if you look worldwide, of course, that number increases exponentially. So how do we solve this for all of these people that need access to, their yard, their, outdoor events, public events, different outdoor areas, and even national parks? And so how do we do that? How do we empower people to have the best access in their lives to participate in the things that they want and need to do, whether that's recreation like surfing, whether it's going to work or accessing their home. So these are the types of things that we're thinking about. Okay, so this is a fun picture. This is the first handmade prototype of our portable pathway system. And when you're thinking about solving a problem for anyone, whether it's something you just want to make for that one person or yourself, or whether it's something you want to make for, a business, you always have to test things out. So I went to Home Depot like 4 times in one day to buy materials, put them together, and see if it works. You have to test it. So after initial testing, we ended up finding out about the World Adaptive Surfing Championships, which is now called the World Para Surfing Championships. And this happens to occur in La Jolla Shores pretty much every year. Of course, just like everything else last year was strange. However, it did occur in March, right before things shut down. So that was interesting. But essentially, we were able to test out our prototype with world-class athletes from Japan, from South Africa, from here. And it was incredible. We got a lot of great feedback to help continue to develop our invention. And so one thing that, of course, you might think about is, how do you fund creating something? Because I was a student when I created the Access Trax product, which was initially called Beach Trax because it was invented for surfers. But really, I encourage each and every one of you to, as you are students, you have a ton of resources at your fingertips, whether it's your professors, your classmates, and your networking, or it's your university or the general community that has scholarships or grant competitions for you to compete in with your ideas. So I know SDSU has ZIP, which is the Zon Innovation Platform, and there's tons of other competitions at different universities as well, where you can pitch your business idea, whether it's just an idea or you have a prototype, and you can win some funding so that you can take this thing to market. So that's what we did is we were searching out different grant competitions, and we found one while we were still students, which was great. So that paid for the prototyping so that I didn't have to make things by hand anymore, because that was a lot of work. Still is today, actually, even though it's manufactured, but it's a lot less work than it would have been. This is our first manufactured prototype, and this is Waves for All. So if any of you have volunteered with Waves for All up in Oceanside, or at their sailing program here at Mission Bay, you may recognize some of these people. But that's Albert. He just moved back to Texas, but he was trying out that prototype, and he was the first person to be able to do so. So it was really, really cool moment. But you'll see that this prototype is going to still look different from what we actually launched our company with. And I'll explain why. So you can see here, this looks different from the last photo. And the reason is that when you're using this other product, it's a lot harder or impossible for a person who is walking to use this, because there's holes in the center. And it's also impossible to connect this pathway side by side to make it wider. And it's also impossible for a person to really do a full 360-degree turn on this pathway in their mobility device. So that is why you see this final version, it has just kind of like one pretty solid square. And that's what we came up with. And you can see that you can connect it on all 4 sides in the photo. That's Ty. He's an adaptive surfer. And this event was a rental in Las Vegas for the Zappos Adaptive Fashion Show. We needed to have a ADA compliant portable access route to go over the grass, because thick grass can be a barrier too for people. So when you're developing a company or a project and you want to explain to people in 1 or 2 sentences what it is you do, it's called a value proposition, or your like really quick elevator pitch, right? So our elevator pitch is that we empower people of all abilities to safely and easily access outdoor areas and recreation using our innovative modular pathway solutions. You can see how I started with the word empower. We empower people. And that's something that draws you in instead of me starting with, I have a pathway. So when you're creating your value propositions or working on things, try to put the impact first and the customer first. It's just a quick tip. This is me in my garage. Yes, I still put these together in my garage by hand. And we manufacture locally here in San Diego. And the product is made of materials sourced from the US right now. So that's something that you'll consider if you ever start your own company, or you're working for another company and you try to ask them like, oh, like, what's your supply chain? Where do you get all these pieces to put them together to make a final product that helps people? It's pretty interesting. So the main groups of people that I can serve with my product is families. So people who maybe somebody has a physical disability and they're active, they like to be outdoors, maybe they travel, or they're somebody who needs access to their garden and their home. Because a lot of times when you're doing aging in place is a concept where somebody wants to not have to move to a nursing home or assisted living facility. They want to live at home, but maybe their front door have multiple steps to get in and they can't or don't want to install a ramp. Maybe their backyard has a flat entrance to the back door. You can actually use the Access Trax portable pathway to create almost like a sidewalk to their backyard from the front so they don't have to use a ramp. These are just interesting implications that every day we're learning a new use for our product because the customers, they have problems and they're trying to find ways to solve them. And so it's incredible to have that relationship and communication with the people that you serve. And then you learn more. So we also, of course, work with adaptive sports, nonprofits, and organizations. And I know we've worked with the SDSU Adapted Athletics for their turkey paddle a couple of years ago at Mission Bay. They had the pathway set up to their kayaking area. That was really cool. We also work with government entities like the National Park Service and Parks and Rec to make public areas accessible. And that's where ADA compliance comes into play. So ADA law is something that mandates fair access to public accommodations. And this also applies to public schools, right? You all deserve to have access to your classrooms, to your different events, to your meetings. And so ADA is a really important piece of legislation helps guarantee, or at least help guarantee, it should guarantee access in those situations. So that picture that you see is actually the Golden Gate Bridge in the background. So we have our product installed at a couple of beaches in San Francisco, which is really exciting. We also do event rentals. I don't know if you've heard of the Switchfoot Bro-Am Beach Festival, but that happens at Moonlight Beach in Encinitas, so a little bit north of here. And it's a huge concert and charity benefiting event. And we had over 500 feet of pathway laid out so that the adaptive surfers could get down from, the paved area down onto the sand to the surf event and compete. So that was a really fun event to work at. And then a couple of new implications, the construction industry. San Diego Gas and Electric actually uses our mats because they're so durable that they can withstand 13,000-pound forklifts driving over them. And it prevents the forklifts from sinking into soft sand or gravel. That's pretty cool. And then the picture on the right, so the film industry. Starting in fall of last year, we started renting to ABC Studios. And I don't know if anybody recognizes, can anybody put in the chat who they think this show is from or what show? So it's a medical show and the main character is sitting on this fake lifeguard tower. Anybody? Anybody? It's Grey's Anatomy. So there we go, Grey's. Yeah. Okay, so Grey's Anatomy started renting last year. Basically, it's a lot to move all the camera equipment and people across sand, like hundreds of feet of sand, especially. So they rent my pathway to make it easier for them to move their equipment around. Super cool. Thank you. Yeah. So real quickly, like our first customers, what you would call kind of the early adopters, definitely the adaptive surfing community, right? Because this is who the product was invented for. So you see the Japan Adaptive Surfing Organization, they're using my mats in Japan. It's so cool. You may have heard of the Challenged Athletes Foundation. And if not, I highly recommend you check them out. They're local here in San Diego, but they do events and sports grants to people all over the world. And then the Stoke for Life Foundation is up in Oceanside, and they were one of the first people to purchase our product. This is just a couple of other types of customers we can serve. It does not always have to be an event centered around adaptive athletics or people who need accessibility. This has to do with universal design concept. Our product is just a portable sidewalk, so anybody can benefit from it. And so we had an event for the Surf Dog Surfathon a couple of years ago, and they just wanted our pathway to get to the vendor section on the sand. So it made it easier for not only the vendors to set up their heavy equipment, for just the general public to understand the flow of foot traffic, like where am I supposed to go? So that was really cool. Just some more funding opportunities. Last year, Access Trax won the FedEx Small Business Grant, which was incredible. Over 4,000 businesses applied, and we won first place. So last year was a tough year, and of course the pandemic continues to have its ripple effects. And I know that was one of the questions in the document that was sent over to me. So I'll just take a moment to discuss how the pandemic has impacted Access Trax. So last year we had a ton of events scheduled for 2020 in the second half of the year, like right when summer started through fall. So we took deposits for these events to guarantee that we could set up for that event. And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and our sales declined just a little bit because, of course, a lot of our customers are nonprofits. So when the pandemic affects the nonprofit industry, it can also affect us because then they can't afford to buy our products. So that was tough. And the event industry, as you all know, everything was like cancel, 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 postpone. So of course we refunded all of those down payments for those events. So it was tough. And the FedEx Small Business Grant definitely helped a lot, as well as you may have heard terms, the Paycheck Protection Program the government had, which is called the PPP. And essentially, if you couldn't make payroll, if you couldn't pay yourself or your employees, that helped you do that. And that's a forgivable loan. The EIDL, or I think it's the emergency or the economic injury disaster loan, EIDL, we also applied for and got that funding from the government. So it's a really long-term, very low interest, low monthly payment loan to help businesses get back on their feet. So those are some of the things that we did, as well as, look, we got into the film industry, and they're very much recession proof because TV shows, films, they still go on, right? We need our entertainment. So they're able to still afford to pay for our services. And so that was something that helped make up from losses in the other side of the event industry. One thing I wanted to just really quickly brush on is that one of the challenges in starting a company, no matter what industry you're in, is that you need to decide like, okay, is this something that you have a co-founder or co-founders for, or is it something you're doing on your own? And if you have any co-founders or even investors, everything is about how you navigate that relationship, and communication is so important. And so when I founded the companies, you see that I'm a co-founder, but the original co-founder, Eric, which is pictured on the left, he was also in OT school with me. We just happened to work on school projects together because this was invented in school. And we started the company together 50-50 when we graduated from OT school in 2017. And within a few months, he decided that he wanted to lower his risk, his financial risk. Startups are tough. And he said, look, I'm starting a family. I want to stay an owner of the company, but I want you to do all the work. So I'd imagine that doesn't quite seem fair. In a school project, if you have another partner and you're like expected to do 50-50 of the work and you both get an A on it, great. But what happens when you do 90%, 100% of the work and you get an A for this group project, but that other person didn't do any of the work? It just doesn't seem right, So one of the things I would say is that today we're totally fine. Like it's a great relationship. Eric is still a part owner of the company, but we were able to negotiate terms to where he's not a 50% owner because he's not putting in 50% of the effort, right? I'm doing all of the work ever since 2018, and so he's a 10% owner today. And that's where we are now, and it seems to be working. So make sure that if you start something, you have everything written down and signed in a contract with what the expectations are, and that's pretty much called an operating agreement. So when you go through that yourselves, if you do, operating agreement and a buy-sell agreement, if that somebody in your ownership party ever wants to sell their equity in the company and leave, right, and exit. So that's what a buy-sell agreement is. So just some things to consider. And then on the right, I did have an investor for a short period of time, just over a year. And, really, it's all about how you manage expectations, have everything written down and agreed upon, and common goals in mind. So one of the questions that I got was what are some of the traits that make you successful, right? And one of the traits that I feel makes me successful as an entrepreneur or just a person in general is definitely emotional intelligence. And if you haven't heard what the heck that is, essentially these are the 5 concepts of emotional intelligence, between social skills to empathy, all of that. And one of the biggest ones is empathy. Because if you can kind of put yourself in that other person's shoes, whether that other person is your business partner, your customer, your supplier, or some other partner, you're able to be more intelligent about how you negotiate things and understand the entire context of what needs to happen in conversation. You understand with empathy and just really looking at the situation, you start to learn what are the other person's motivators. And that's huge, right? Because if you text, then you will probably not be as successful as you could have been in a negotiation or just a communication in general. I really like this quote. We don't have to be smarter than the rest. We have to be more disciplined than the rest. And that's true in school. That's true in life, and especially true in entrepreneurship. If you can persevere and keep moving forward, and maybe you don't feel like you're the smartest in a certain skill or subject, learn it. Find a mentor or find a resource and educate yourself. That's perseverance. And so you can start to fill in those gaps. Or you find a partner who is skilled in those things, and then the two of you or three of you together have all the skills that you think that you need to kind of keep moving forward on things. So that kind of concludes my kind of main presentation. And then I just want to, I have a couple slides with the other questions that people have asked. So I want to make sure that I kind of touched upon those for y'all. But of course, there's time for questions as well. And I'm happy to kind of speak with you a little bit more. Feel free to write down my phone number too. That's my business line phone number, and it forwards to my cell phone. So you need to text me or call me for something too. If email isn't your favorite thing, feel free. So I'm going to stop share and take a peek at the chat. Okay. Yeah, Grey's Anatomy, it's super awesome to be able to work with them. Okay, so for Grey's Anatomy, because of COVID, I don't get to be on set. So the way that I work with the industry right now is that they tell me ahead of time, maybe like a week or a couple days, that they need an order. And then I drive up to LA and I drop it off at the studio. So that's kind of cool. I've been on the studio. And then they load it up on their trucks and they drive it on location to the beach. So I'm not there. They do all the setup, their riggings crew. So I actually, that's really nice. I don't have to do all the manual labor. And then I go pick it up at the beach. So I have been on location at their beach set, the private beach club. So like nobody who doesn't live there can even get to that beach. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, that's kind of my experience so far with them. The other thing I wanted to share is just those questions so that I can make sure I went over everything for you. Share, okay. Awesome. All right, so give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Okay, perfect. So this is just, oh, hello. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I think I already explained my company. We sell and rent the portable pathways. The product has customers in 11 different countries so far. It's literally incredible. I'm so jealous when I ship off product to Australia or like Europe, and I'm like, can I go? So this was a great question. Do I believe San Diego to be a hub for adaptive sports? And if so, how did you support San Diego organizations with your product? So when I first kind of invented the product in 2016, we tested it. We tested our handmade prototype at the Western Surfing Association, or WSA, surf event in Ocean Beach. And there were 5 adaptive surfers there. So from the very, very beginning, adaptive sports has definitely been a huge motivator for this. This company wouldn't exist without adaptive sports existing here in San Diego, really. So we started by working with adaptive surfers. So like I mentioned, there's the Waves for All group, Stoke for Life. There's so many different adaptive sports organizations in Southern California, and I have an entire list of those. So I'd be more than happy to email those to your vice president, and she can email that out to anybody who wants it, or you can email me directly, because I have a huge list. So yes, I believe San Diego definitely a hub for adaptive sports. And then how did I support them? I mean, I volunteer all the time. We've volunteered at over 30 different events so far, including, the U.S. Open Adaptive Surfing Championships, which happens usually in September or October every year in Oceanside. We've done Waves for All a ton of times, and then we've even gone to Costa Rica for the Costa Rica Adaptive Surfing Open. So that was cool. I got to put a stamp in my passport for the first time. But yeah, definitely tons of different organizations that are based here. Okay, so the next question, what personal qualities or characteristics are important to being successful? So I kind of mentioned emotional intelligence is huge. I think the other main skill that people talk about, but you may not really kind of deeply understand, is resilience. Resilience is huge just in life, especially as an entrepreneur. So resilience to me is basically being able to persevere through challenges, even if you kind of have no control over that challenge. So, for example, a child might be resilient in that they may live in a home where unfortunately there's domestic abuse or there's poverty or hunger, things like that. But if that child is still able to kind of have a positive outlook on people and life, that is resilience. Them being able to grow up and maintain their sense of hope, and not feel like they're a failure because it's not their fault. So that's, to me, is resilience. And then another example of resilience is maybe you're in college and you're working a full-time job and you're attending virtual school and it's just really tough balancing everything. You're still able to kind of keep your eyes on the prize of you have a goal. Maybe that goal is to, graduate with no debt or very little debt. So having goals in mind is really key for resilience too. It helps you stay focused. Okay, and then, why did I keep this? Here we go. Okay, so the next question. Can you describe some of the athletes, trainers, coaches, or other professionals I've come across in my time within the adaptive community? Okay, so definitely a lot of different athletes. So a lot of the events I volunteer at happen to be with, at the beach or the bay because of sand. So I work with a lot of people who are adaptive surfers. Maybe they have a prosthetic limb. Maybe they're a veteran who unfortunately experienced trauma, working, at a war. Maybe they're somebody who was in a motorcycle accident. And we have athletes who have spinal cord injuries, and so they use wheelchairs or other mobility devices. I've worked with athletes who have what's called a brachial plexus injury. So depending on that type of injury, they have limited use of one of their arms potentially. There's people with spina bifida. All types of people. I guess you could call it neurodiverse. So it's helpful to kind of get a little bit of an idea about each and every one of those types of challenges. Like what do the people need assistance with in their sport? So if they have a spinal cord injury and they have feeling from their belly button up, so they have mobility, motor control from the belly button up, they have pretty good like upper body trunk control. So if they're doing what's called wave ski, so they're seated, and I had a picture of that in my presentation. It was Chris. It looks like a kayak almost, and he has a paddle. That's a wave ski for adaptive surfing. And actually people who are not adaptive athletes also use wave skis. But they may need assistance with some transfers depending on the height difference from like the chair to the wave ski. They may need assistance in carrying their equipment from the car to the water. So you really just start to learn based on one, watching, and two, kind of asking, where can I help? Instead of jumping in and putting your hands on them and saying like, oh, let me help you. It's like kind of angle it of like, how can I help? And they can direct you with what they need because they're the ones who are experienced in exactly what they need to succeed. Haven't worked with too many like trainers necessarily, but definitely I see a lot of people in this community. They're physical therapists, they're occupational therapists, they're even like they work at let's say an organization called Adapts, which is I'll type it in the chat. They are based in Carlsbad. It's basically like a gym membership for people who are neurodiverse. So Adapts. Functional fitness. Okay, so that's a cool organization to look up. And yeah, I think that it's just, there's all kinds of people. It's never a dull moment. And it really just, when you're communicating with them, ask those questions, learn, be open to direction, and you'll have a good time. And then I think I might have touched upon how COVID impacted access tracks, but how it impacted my role as an occupational therapist. So right now, I only have one student because I'm very part-time. My focus is on access tracks, but as an occupational therapist, I work in the school system, and I work with a student. Their delivery of OT services right now for this particular school is all virtual. So it's called telehealth, and you may have heard of that. But it's a way to still engage safely with your clients if they're old enough, because it's tough to do telehealth with kindergartners. Let me tell you, how do you communicate to somebody with, a shorter attention span? Like, okay, like, pick up your crayon and or like your scissors, how do you do that through the computer screen? It's like, I feel lucky that my student that I have is in high school, and that the virtual telehealth services is perfect for her. It works amazing. Yeah, so it's tough right now. Give your OT and PT friends a hug who have to do telehealth. And then, yeah, okay, so those were some of the questions that I pulled from the document, but I want to open it up to the chat, or if you want to unmute yourselves, or if there's anything else that I can address, I would love to. I do see a question. Was I aware of the adaptive sports community prior to my product? No, not really. Through my company and through volunteering, that's how I really branched out. And honestly, in 2015, that was the first year that the adaptive surfing championships ever happened, like ever, the World Adaptive Championships. So when I invented my product, it was 2016. So even just in the last 5, 6, 7 years, there's been a huge explosion of growth in adaptive athletics. So I feel really lucky that I was able to get in that world when I did and just keep learning. And then another question from Tia is, can I talk a little bit more about how the National Park Service is using the product? Yeah, so basically the National Park Service, just like any other public or government entity, they need to be ADA compliant. So when you have an outdoor area, which of course National Parks is a lot of the outdoors, right? Whether it's sand or gravel or dirt or thick grass, like we want, wherever there's an area where the general public is allowed to go or encouraged to go for like a viewing site or a monument or something like that, or a campground, we want people with mobility challenges to also be able to go there, right? And so that's where ADA compliance comes in. We want fair access to public places. And the National Park Service in San Francisco, or the Golden Gate Recreational Area is what it's called, their accessibility coordinator is the one who purchased my product to install it. I'm going to go plug in my laptop really quickly because my computer is super finicky and it was just telling me it's running low. So hold that thought.
Yeah, no worries. I just typed in the chat, but if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and type it in the chat, or you can obviously unmute and ask it if you are comfortable enough to do so.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that was quick. I was like, no, don't die on me now. So yeah, the National Park Service, the ADA coordinator is the name of the position. It might be the general supervisor of the park, but essentially parks are trying to become more accessible to everyone. It's having their guided tours have, like an audio guided tour if they have a visual impairment, or whether they have Braille in some of their guides, so that somebody who is visually impaired can use Braille to access some of the brochures and some of the tour information. So really, really cool. So we're advocating for that all the time. Okay, yes. Any other questions? You can, like she said, unmute yourself or hop on in, but please stay in touch. This was super awesome. Follow us on Instagram to stay engaged with what we're doing. There are some really exciting projects coming up. I'm working with other government entities like in New York to have more public beach access. I just sold to a VA. So I work with the Department of Veterans Affairs for their different VA clinics across the US. They have what's called therapeutic recreation, and they use our product for their outdoor therapeutic recreational activities with their therapists. So super awesome to be able to work with veterans as well. But I mean, I'm an open book. So if there's anything that you want to ask me that you want to ask via email, that's cool too. And thank you for your time.
I just said in the chat, but I have to go now. But thank you so much for speaking. It was really interesting to hear about like how versatile your product was. Like I had no idea it could be used for like construction or like even just transporting materials like not related to any like adaptive sports. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, it's cool to learn what it can be used for.
All right, well, I'm gonna hop off now. Bye. Thank you again.
And I just wanted to say, thank you so much for speaking on both and like answering all the questions too. It was just like a collection and being able to touch on that. But I did want to also say that the way you presented was really great because you're very personable and relatable when you speak. And I thought that actually helped a lot too because it helps a lot of us in undergrad kind of think about our future and like what we're going to be doing moving forward. And it's really great to see that you have like these two careers, but like you had a passion for one that actually ended up creating another one.
Right.
That's really, really great. I thought you had so many good tips in there too.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm always happy to share even more tips too. Like I said, if anybody wants to know the different adaptive sports organization resources in Southern California in general, I have that list. So I'll email that to you and you can share it too. But I have that. And I always love talking to other students because, like I said, I was there not very long ago, or at least I like to think that. But you know, I just feel like students, you know, you're able to have so many resources at your fingertips. And for you to kind of start thinking about these things now, you'll be ahead of the game and you'll get so much out of life with figuring out like what your passion is and what your why is, like why you want to help people or how. So
And did anyone have any last minute questions before we kind of like share the screen again? Anything to get out? Okay, well, we really do appreciate you taking the time and coming on and speaking with us. We're gonna just say a few things about the org. So you're welcome to stay, or if you need to head out, Kelly, that's totally fine too. And also thank you for sharing your contact information. There were a few people that did reach out to us asking for that, so you sending that immediately was really great. So yeah, reach out to Kelly if you have any other questions later on too. I'm sure she's more than happy to answer them. So
yes. All right. Well, thanks again. Have a great day, everyone. Hang in there.
bye.
Bye.
All right, Madeline, if you want to share screen. Oh, perfect. Thank you guys for staying and attending for Kelly. It was really awesome to hear her speak. And just like just two things that we needed to like mention to you guys. Venmo, it's just dues, $10. There are a few reasons that we collect dues, and they're just there below. No need to go into a spiel for it. Next slide. So then the other thing was senior chords. We just want to make sure that we're getting chords out to all the seniors that are graduating. So there was a form that we filled that if you filled out at the beginning of the semester, no need to reach out to us. We know who you are. But if you are graduating and you want a chord, definitely shoot us an email. And those are some of the requirements for active member status and getting a chord just below 8 points to be active this semester, which if you guys are here, I'm sure you guys are being active, and then 50 points total, but we're lenient on that depending on like the semester that you started. So I think, yeah. So we just wanted to say thanks for coming. I am going to send one link in the chat that I forgot to at the beginning. Oh my gosh, where is it? It's the tiny URL for the partner hitting program. For the program, like the wheelchair tennis team. If you guys want to go like partake in that, I definitely think you guys should look at it. It's really fun to like kind of play with the athletes. You know, okay, you're not going to be playing, but you're going to be there and you get to watch them practice and talk to them. They're all really cool and easy to get along with, and I'm sure they would appreciate the help. But that's all I got. Does anyone have any questions? All right, well, that's all we have. Oh wait, do we have a question?
Yeah. For the tennis hitting thing, does it extend to like next year too, or is it just an opportunity for this semester?
So they're looking for it this semester, but if it's successful with because there is like a small orientation that they do have to do so that you know a little bit about wheelchair tennis prior to going out and helping them. So there's going to be like a small cohort, so they might close it kind of soon, of people that they will have kind of rotating to help out. But if it's successful, I'm sure they'll put it in for next semester too, because they need the help. And maybe even in the summer, if you're here in San Diego, you could reach out to see if you can come help with practices too.
Thank you.
Anyone else?